Welcome. Bienvenidos to MarthaEmpowers, a podcast dedicated to empowering first-generation college students and their families. If you ever had the opportunity to participate in the annual U.S. Hispanic Leadership Institute Conference, one of the nation's top largest leadership development conferences, then you may know my guest speaker today, Marisel Herrera. I met Marisel during one of her jam-packed, empowering USHLI workshops many years ago, whose powerful personal stories and heartfelt messages uplifted and impacted me and hundreds of conference participants to live a life of courage and passion in a Boricua-style, si se puede gana spirit, having you believe you can achieve anything in life. Marisel Herrera is a leader, author, speaker, consultant, and certified coach with 25 years of experience who equips diverse audiences with tangible tools that empower their success. Her message affirms the power of education, resiliency, and culture to transform one's life. This belief is personal. She was the student who almost fell through the cracks, and relationships that meaningfully engaged her were the difference makers. Previously, the founding director of an award-winning coaching center at the largest university in the U.S., she has coached countless students. She currently consults institutions and trains college access and success professionals on evidence-based coaching approaches to outreach and retention. She holds a graduate degree in education and received leadership and coaching certifications from several prestigious institutions. The author of 2 books, Puerto Rican Goldilocks, A Lyrical Journey Through El Barrio, a memoir about her first-generation journey, and Lean Into Grace, Power Up for a Fierce and Fearless Life, a coaching book for women. Marisel is also CEO of Marisel Speaks and creator of the Arise Success Coaching Model, which can be found on mariselspeaks.com. Bienvenida. Welcome, Marisel, to the MarthaEmpowers podcast.
Muchísimas gracias, Martha, for that beautiful introduction, for this awesome podcast that you're using as a platform to empower first-generation students and their families that speak so highly of you. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Thank you for saying yes and for being here with us. So cuéntame, ¿quién es Marisel?
Marisel es la hija de Carlos Antonio Herrera y Fermina Fuentes. I am the daughter of Carlos Antonio Herrera and Fermina Fuentes, who are from the beautiful island of Puerto Rico. And I grew up in New York City, like so many Puerto Ricans, as a New Yorican.
When did you start thinking about going to college? And who are some people who influence you on your college journey?
Even though I'm a first-generation college student, I would say that the desire to go to college and really just to learn started very early in life. I was really fortunate because early on, myself and my twin sister, Marisel, were placed in some programs for students who were academically very talented very early on in elementary school. And so teachers, schools saw our potential and they gave us a great education, even in the public school system of New York. So I say that the desire to go to college was fed very early on through those experiences, through teachers throughout my life and the magnet schools that I attended. I would also say that my mother, my parents were a big motivator. While they didn't have elementary level education, it wasn't uncommon for me to wake up and see them reading the encyclopedia while they were still hardcover books, cover to cover. So they loved education and they didn't have an opportunity for it, but they loved learning. So they modeled that. And in terms of really impacting my education and specifically my college education and my profession, that would be my eldest brother, Carlos Herrera. He was the first in the family to go to college, and I was born his freshman year of college. And so it took him a very long time to finish, as so many of the first students do, but he would take us up summertime and maybe visit campus. So I remember being like 9 or 10 years old, visiting a college campus. And so between all those people and experiences, it planted the seed throughout my life that college is something that I wanted to do. And to be very honest with you, college was also a way out of the poverty and the violence and the blight of Spanish Harlem in New York City, where I grew up. So it was both something I was excited about, but it was also an escape from the reality that I was dealing with as a first generation low income student in a very large family.
What does it mean to be a first generation student? And what were some challenges you encountered?
Sort of educational definition of a first generation college student is a student whose parents have not achieved a bachelor's degree. And so they are the first ones to do that. I say that because there's varying definitions, but that is sort of the trio national definition. So even if you have a sibling that's gone or is going, you're still first generation if your parents have not received a bachelor's degree. That's the literal definition. I like to see first generation, though, as something bigger than that. I believe that it means that you are a trailblazer, that you are a pioneer, that you're setting a course that can change not only your life, but will impact generations to come. Like I said, my brother's going to college impacted all of us, impacted me. My going to college impacts my son. And so it has, to me, is a real source of pride to be first generation.
Many first generation students may experience something called imposter syndrome. Can you tell us what this is exactly, and how can students overcome this?
Sure. And to answer your other question about other challenges as well, for me, I had a lot of the academic preparation. I had gotten good preparation in my public school education, K through 12. So it wasn't so much the academic preparedness that sometimes first gen students struggle with in college. But when I got to college, I went to a small, private, predominantly white institution in upstate New York. It was beautiful, but it also made me confront a lot of the realities of being one of the very few minority or low income students. So definitely feeling like I belonged was a challenge going to college in my campus climate. I also, was very prideful. I was used to doing things myself and not asking for help, just figuring it out, which is also a strength as first gen. But out of balance, it makes it really difficult to get the help that you need early on, or, ask for tutoring or ask for support. And then very specifically for me in my freshman year of college, I got involved in a very unhealthy, toxic relationship that cost me a lot, both emotionally and academically. And so I went from being a very, very strong student in my GPA. By fall semester, I had like 1.27 GPA. And it was a very painful, crucible experience, but it was one that, as a result of getting help and getting through it, I was able to get out of an unhealthy relationship, get counseling, get support, and still rebound from, which is why I tell students, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And the fact that you fall, but the fact that being able to get back up. Those were some of my personal challenges. Clearly, financial challenges were a major concern. I was always worried about money, worried about my family. I did have scholarship, but there was, definitely the financial and sort of the cultural adjustments to the campus that I was on. Also, the last thing I would say is that the campus climate at the time was threatened because there was a very big nationally high-profile case, racial case, and it occurred in the town that I went to school. And so I had the unfortunate circumstance to be confronted with the Ku Klux Klan in 1989 on my college campus. And so my activism, student leadership, was birthed out of that situation as a freshman. And it was a bad situation, but it was one that made me realize the power and the voice that we, even as first-gen students, have on a campus. You asked me about the imposter syndrome, and this is a topic that I'm really, really passionate about, that I have a personal goal of eradicating. Imposter syndrome is a psychological phenomenon. It's the feeling like a fraud. So being a student who gets into college but feeling like you don't belong, or who gets the scholarship but feeling that you don't deserve it, or that you don't have what it takes. And it's a feeling that affects disproportionately first gen and underrepresented and female populations. And so it's something that a lot of us go through, not thinking that we're smart enough, good enough, strong enough, whatever enough. And it's like an internal dialogue where you always feel like you're faking it or you're going to be found out. And it's very concerning because it has very, very dire impacts on not only your psychological health and well-being, but also on your academic performance, your retention, your graduation. It affects you as a professional because you don't ask for raises and you don't go for promotions. So it's a very pervasive thing that a lot of times people think it's just them feeling it, but it's actually something that I think I read 70% of us will feel it at some point or another. And it is particularly damaging to first generation and minority students and professionals.
So what can students do to get rid of that imposter syndrome feeling?
There's a lot of different things. And I would say that imposter syndrome is both an individual experience, that you might have your own set of stressors and reasons for why you feel it, but it's something that's created by systemic factors like racism and sexism. So I say all of that because I don't want you to think that this is only you and you've just got to fix it, right? This is much more complicated. But in terms of things that I teach students to do is, first of all, self-awareness, just naming it, knowing what it is, knowing why it exists, the systemic reasons that exist, and then really realizing I'm not alone is a really important step, because then it allows you to begin to explore those feelings with someone else, whether that's through counseling, whether that's through reading books, whether that's going through workshop sessions. I do a workshop session on this regularly at conferences, and it's like really validating for people because they think that I'm the only one who feels this way. And when they find out there's like millions of people who feel this way. So first is the self-awareness. And then a specific thing that I tell students to do, which anybody can do, is something that I call sort of inventorying your strengths, right? So a lot of what imposter syndrome tells us is that we're fake, we're a fraud, we're not the real thing. And it's based a lot on our emotions, right? And messages that we get. And so one very specific thing that someone can do is list a list of facts that are true about them, that are irrefutable, indisputable. So for instance, I got into college. I am finishing high school. I won that scholarship. I got a promotion. I'm a good person and a good friend, and making this list of actual facts about them that are true, that are undeniable, no matter how you feel about them, positive facts, and keeping them handy. And whenever those feelings come up that try to undermine you, speak back to that with the positive facts about you. I go so far as to say, put it on your screensaver, put it on a Post-it note, make visual images of it, because a lot of it is talking back positively and accurately to our inner critic. And that helps empower you and makes you feel more confident. So that's one specific thing you can do.
You have centered your work to empowering first-generation students, founding an award-winning coaching center and creator of the Arise Success Coaching. What led you to this professional career path?
That's a great question. Like many, I think, people, and definitely first-gen professionals, I don't know that I had a planned out career path. I just know that based on my own experiences in my freshman year, almost being kicked out, in my freshman year with campus activism and what I mentioned about the KKK and subsequent leadership, I realized that I was a part of making the kind of changes I wanted to on college campuses. And at the time, as a student leader, I didn't even know there was a profession that you would study and become a college administrator. But it was my student leadership that led me to that, my desire to change the environment, to make it more welcoming for people like me and students like me. And this really strong belief that our students need to know that they are enough. They're talented enough, they're good enough, they're worthy enough, that they're not less than because they're the first or because they're poor or because they're immigrant. This is like a fire in me that has sustained me in my career for 25 years and has most recently culminated with me creating this Arise Success coaching model, which is specifically about how do you support diverse and first generation student success, not by asking them to change who they are inherently and leave their identity and their cultural community at the door, but rather embracing it and really seeing their first gen identity as an asset, as well as all of their other identities. So for me, it's been more of a calling than a career plan. And this is something that I wish for you and for everyone, is that you find that thing that makes you come alive, because every day of my life, what I do is passion, right? It's really not work. It's living my life's passion and calling. And so for me, it really beckoned me. And that's what I encourage people to find, not just their career, but what is their purpose on this earth.
You are a published author of two of my favorite books. What motivated you to publish your story, to publish a book about your life?
Thank you so much for those kind words about my book. You know, when you write books, you really put yourself out there and sort of vulnerable for the world to see. It's a great question, because Puerto Rican Goldilocks, my first book, A Lyrical Journey Through El Barrio, was actually my way of navigating and coping with my identity as a graduate student. When I came out to graduate school at Arizona State University back in 1995, I just really dealt with a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of sense of belonging, a lot of very different environment than New York City, where I had grown up. And I would sit in the courtyard, if you will, of my college in between classes, and I would write my feelings. And I've always been a person to express myself through short stories and poetry. And I would write my feelings. And I almost dropped out of grad school because I felt so out of place. And writing what would ultimately become Puerto Rican Goldilocks was my way of holding on to my heritage as a Puerto Riqueña from New York, holding on to my memories, but also reconciling the new reality I was in. Little did I know that it would become a book and that it would resonate with so many people, even beyond New Yorkers, right? So that was the impetus. It was actually catharsis for me. It was almost like a journal when I first wrote Puerto Rican Goldilocks. My second book, which I wrote many years later, was really, again, catharsis for me. Lean Into Grace, Power for a Fierce and Fearless Life, was written because I went through a really difficult time several years ago, probably in the last decade or so, where I was really coming to terms with who am I? What does success mean to me? Is it, all the accolades and the certificates and the impact and all of that? And I had been very successful in my career, but I realized that something was missing. And so Lean Into Grace is my story, both as a professional woman and a first generation woman, but also my story as a woman of faith. And if you recall, Lean In was a very famous book written by the COO of Facebook. Well, Lean Into Grace was my response to that book, because I felt like a lot of times women are told to be more like men, and that our models of leadership are to become more masculine, or in some way that falls short. And I've had lots of leadership training. For me, leaning into grace meant leaning into my faith in God and to his particular purpose for my life, and to the peace and the power that only my faith could give me. And so I wrote it as an antidote to lean in, but I also wrote it to capture my story and also help other women who might be feeling, how do I fit faith into my life as a professional, right? Because we're always told, get the degrees, faith is sort of like a back burner thing. It's never really talked about in leadership in secular settings. And yet so much of our heritage, so much of our familia strength, right, come from various faith traditions, right? And so for me, that was the missing puzzle in my life. And I really believe that my own spiritual growth has actually been the game changer in my life to become what many people say, I'm an unstoppable woman. Well, I'm still human, but a lot of my confidence comes from my Godfidence.
Given the pandemic situation, as many students may be struggling with staying in school or even going to college, what message do you have for our first generation students and their families during these times?
Yeah, we know that I heard it said some way when our communities, when white communities get a cough, we get pneumonia. And what the quote was trying to say was that when hard times come, it usually unevenly affects people who are already challenged by poverty or by discrimination and the like. And I think that the pandemic has done exactly that. We know what the rates are in our community, how much bigger they are, how many more deaths we have. So it can be very grim to think about that. At the same time, what I also know is that in this pandemic and in this virtual setting and all the obstacles that it brings, is that we're bigger than this, right? So yes, this is hard. Yes, this is unlike anything we've ever lived through as a country, as a world, but we're tough people. And if there's anybody who knows how to rebound, it's us, right? So not that it's the struggle. My message is that the struggle is real, but so is our power. We are resilient people. We are resourceful people. We come from ancestors who have fought for years for us to be here. And no matter how hard it is, we have to fight, both in using our education, using our faith, using our political power. We are luchadoras, we are a fighting, winning people. And so I get concerned because I hear a lot of my colleagues talk about how hard it is for our students. And I agree, but our students are also really strong, and tapping into those first generation assets, that resilience, those cultural strengths, all of that is part of how we're going to get through this, as well as obviously giving them support. So my message to first gen students and to their parents is that we're going to get through this. We are absolutely going to get through this. We have what it takes, that we actually have so many things of an advantage over others, right? We are people who have overcome so much, who are creative, who are innovative, making a dollar out of 15 cents. My mother fed 8 children with 1 chicken fryer and made it delicious. So we are people who are gritty, we're resilient, we have strong bonds to each other, to our community, we help each other out. And those values and that character and the work that comes from that is going to be a huge part about getting us out there and getting us through the situation. And in fact, maybe leading the way. And to parents, what I really want to say is that I know that schools don't treat you like you're important. And I know that many times you feel left out in the high school and the college environment of your student. Many times they do a poor job of including you, or maybe you can't participate in the same ways that other parents because you're working or whatever it is. But I want you to know that there's a lot of us out there who recognize how absolutely vital you are in your students' education and the realization of their dreams, that you are not an afterthought, that you are not invisible, that you do matter, that everything your daughter or son is in no small part because of the sacrifices you've made, of his abuelos have made. And I just really want to just speak honor to the parents, because many times they are treated either as invisible or as a deficit, and they are neither. They are the strength behind those students. A quick example, I can tell you that I remember my mother couldn't visit my college. She couldn't take off time from work. She couldn't do a lot of those things. But I'll never forget how she took her last $10 and wrapped it in aluminum foil and sent it to me at college so that I would have food for finals. I'll never forget the jobs that she worked, multiple jobs, the sacrifices she made, the prayers she offered. So there's a lot of things that our parents give that is not easily acknowledged by institutions, but that we as people, who as first generation professionals, need to acknowledge and affirm.
Do you have a favorite motivational phrase or mantra that you say to yourself as you motivate so many students? How do you stay motivated and inspired to do the work that you do?
Well, my friends joke because I love quotes and I love phrases, and they're all over my house. And as you know, in my PowerPoints and the like, it would be really hard to pick one. But I would say one that keeps coming up no matter what presentations I do, because I'm so focused on validating people's inner worth and enoughness, is the quote that says, I am, because the words that follow it, I am is a powerful statement because the words that follow it will determine your destiny. And I think that's so powerful because I am blank. I am great. I am a loser. I am going to overcome any of those things that you say. Your brain has no choice but to agree with it. Right. And so we have to be very mindful of our self-talk. And so I am, to me, is one of those powerful quotes or memes because it makes me aware of the power of my words to strengthen me as well as others. And it gives me power because I get to choose every day, every hour, how I am defining myself. So I would say that that's one quote that comes up for me a lot.
Yes, and that's one of my favorite quotes in the morning too, because the brain believes what you tell it. So if you're telling yourself positive affirmations on a daily basis, then you will start and intend for a positive day in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's something that I practice regularly and has really transformed my way of thinking, right? I mean, one of the things that I share in my workshops is that if you want to understand your emotions or your behaviors or your actions, you really need to start with your thoughts. So many times we say, oh, I don't feel like it, or I feel this way. Well, feelings are important, but feelings come from thoughts. And if you can learn how to manage your thought life, then you're able to control or at least shape your emotions so that they serve you in the most positive way. But so many times we get caught up in the emotion and we don't think about the thoughts behind it. And so that I am is about how are you speaking affirmatively, truthfully, honestly about your thoughts. I am strong. I am a survivor. I am healing. I am better today than I was yesterday. All of those I am statements are really, really powerful.
Recently, I read a statistic that said 80% of our thoughts on a daily basis are negative. So a lot of people are experiencing negative thoughts. But if we just take a moment to pause and think about all the positive attributes we can give to ourselves, that I am strong, I am powerful, I am enough, it really is going to have a positive, powerful effect in your life if you start that in the morning. So thank you for bringing that and for sharing that, because it's so true. How can students connect with you? And what are some projects that you're working on this year?
I'm on Facebook, so checking me out on Facebook. I don't do a whole lot of Instagram, but I'm challenging myself to do more of that since that's what I know students are. I speak pretty regularly at conferences, and I also get requests from colleges and universities. So if a student is a student leader or they're at a college or even a high school and they want to hear me speak, they can reach out to me at mariselspeaks.com or info@mariselspeaks.com. So they can reach out to me. They can check out what I do on that website, including motivational speaking, speaking for Hispanic Heritage, Women's History Months, retreats. I've done sorority retreats and boot camps and the like. And I also do at the institutional level consulting and training on the success coaching model. So they can reach me through my website and through my email there. And really, just get the conversation started.
Wonderful. You mentioned Women's History Month, and today is the start of Women's History Month. So who's a woman, a luchadora that you admire in your life?
Oh my God, there's so many of them. I've just got to tell you, I love being a woman, and I love being a woman of color. I have a lot of passion about that. I would say, oh my goodness, well, Michelle Obama is a huge inspiration to me because she herself is a first-gen woman of color, and she's just so authentic and honest. And in her book, Becoming, I do a lot of presenting on her topics. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, major pride there as a fellow Boricua, Puerto Rican, Supreme Court Justice from the Bronx. So I resonate with her. AOC, because she's part of this younger generation who is so bold, youngest Latina Congresswoman ever elected at age 29, and she's courageous and fierce about her values. Stacey Abrams now, just what she's doing. So whether it's on the political front, whether it's educators, I've had some great mentors in my own life, coaches, you name it, from a variety of industries. I'm always seeking out to learn about women and their stories and how they've survived, because I don't really believe anybody who tells you they got there by themselves and nobody helped them didn't get very far. I think we need each other. And I believe not only just women, but just as people, studying other people. And I tell students that now with the internet, I didn't have that growing up, but now you can self-mentor. And what I mean by that is you can mentor yourself by studying these people and watching what they did and knowing their stories. And there's documentaries written about them and trying to emulate the things that you find attractive or admirable in them. So I have many, 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 many heroes and sheroes. I would say, the most powerful one for me is my mother. Even though she's not famous to anyone else, she's an amazing woman who raised 8 children single-handedly, and to this day in her 80s, is still such a source of strength and inspiration.
Marisel, you are truly one of the most inspiring first-generation professionals I know, encouraging and uplifting our comunidad with such authenticity, conviction, and purpose. It has been an honor to have you on the MarthaEmpowers podcast. Thank you, muchas gracias por tus palabras y presencia. Y estudiantes, recuerden, siempre pa'lante.
Gracias, Martha. This has been beautiful and affirming for me to share my story, but also to share the time with you. You've been doing so much for students for so long as well. And I'm thankful for what you're doing to get more inspiration out, more encouragement out. And it's just been a real pleasure. I'd love to come back another time.
Muchas gracias por escuchar. Thank you for listening. This episode was produced by the MarthaEmpowers podcast team. The theme song, El Barrio, is composed and produced by Edwin Miranda. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe, leave a comment, and share with others so together, juntos, we can change, transform, and empower our comunidad. Follow us on social media, #MarthaEmpowers. If there is a topic or question you'd like for me to discuss on a future episode, please send me a message or tag me on Facebook or Instagram. To contact us, you can send an email to marthaempowers@gmail.com. In the meantime, siga adelante y échale muchas ganas. Nos vemos pronto. Adiós. Ciao.